You'll hear on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. I'm your host, Doug Inkler. Joining me in the co-host seats, as always, our good friends Miss Angela Rose
Hello, everyone.
and Mr. Darren Starling.
Hello.
And we are going to have our Anime Boston review show tonight. And joining us are a bunch of guests who were at Anime Boston from various different points of view from what we've done in the past. We want to welcome Anthony from New Edge Gamers, who is in the Vendors Hall.
How's it going, everyone?
A big thank you to Rodney Brown from Nerd Caliber, who is on Con Row.
Howdy, folks.
And of course, our good friends, master cosplayers Sahara and Hatake, who were in the Masquerade. I'm doing good.
Hi.
No technical issues. I just can't talk.
When was the last time you had this many guests?
Last week. In all honesty, because I think John Knight, hello John in the chat, I think it was John or Ross last week, it was like 2 more guests and we'd have the Brady Bunch. Because last week we had the same amount of guests for our 10-year anniversary show.
Congratulations, belated.
Thank you. It's crazy to think that we've been doing this show for 10 years and been enjoying it. But tonight we want to focus on Anime Boston, the good, the bad, the ugly, the fun that we had there, and give you an honest opinion of what we thought of Anime Boston this year. All of us are veterans of going to Anime Boston, minus Darren, who unfortunately, due to being in North Carolina and his work schedule, was unable to make it up this year. The one year he tried to make it up was 2020. He was literally days away from booking plane tickets, and the pandemic hit. So at some point, we will get Darren up for a New England convention. We also want to remind everybody that Anime Boston is brought to you tonight by Home Circle Media for the latest and greatest in anime gear, everything from pens, pencils, stationery, and officially licensed art books. Be sure to check out homecirclemedia.com today or look for them at an upcoming convention near you. We're also brought to you tonight by Triple S Lawn Care. If you're in the Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina area and you need your lawn taken care of, reach out to Darren, who will hook you up with great service for a great price. Again, thank you to everybody for tuning in. As I said, we're going to be reviewing Anime Boston. And, Anthony, this is your first time on the show, so I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself and tell everybody a little bit about what you do.
So my name is Anthony. I'm one of the owners of New Edge Gamers. So what we do is pretty much we sell Japanese video games, consoles, refurbish them, also sell a lot of anime stuff. So you come by our booth, you'll see a lot of figures, keychains, any anime wear, weird things. So like one of the things we sold at Anime Boston was Evangelion LCL bath gel. And we always try to sell like weird, unique things like cups, plates, clocks, puzzles. We had an Evangelion puzzle. So we try to focus on older animes, but then, as we're all getting older also, there's also new animes that we always love, like Friend Rear or, My Hero Academia. Is still not that old and not that new, but we have like, Ava, Hunter x Hunter, Yu Yu Hakusho, Fullmetal Alchemist. So there's like a lot of stuff that's, 10, 30 years old. We have that in stock, like Cowboy Bebop and stuff.
We also want. Oh, go ahead, Ange.
I was going to say, and to see a Faye Valentine figure right next to like Chainsaw Man and Spy Family was kind of amused me greatly.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to say, with our store, at least, we understand that the modern anime fan is a lot of, older people and younger people, because I would say sometimes we have people who are, when we were going to anime cons at like 16 to 20, they like the older stuff and they're like, hey, I can't find this merch because everybody else is trying to sell the newest thing. And I'm like, no, we all appreciate the old stuff and knowing where we came from. I still like watching old anime that's 20 years old again, randomly watch a series and seeing the new figures and old figures next to each other. It's like you can understand where everything came from, like merchandising. Now you can get like 20 different figures for Hatsune Miku, but then you can only find like 2 Faye figures. You know what I mean?
And in the chat, Jason Araz. Sorry if I mispronounced that. Last time I went to Anime Boston 2019 and returned this year, and it felt different. And that is 100% same.
I definitely agree. I would say, at least from me, from the vendor hall, I think it was the busiest I've ever seen it. And I've been going to Anime Boston for the last 3 years as a vendor. And I think as people have gotten more comfortable with the mask mandate and the vaccine mandate, I think this is now the new norm of, I feel like this is like peak 2019. And even then, I was to say it's getting to the point where a lot of old Anime Boston people think of LineCon and how that peak of Anime Boston 10 years ago was. It's starting to feel like that again, where everything's starting to get really tight, really packed. And now we need a newer place to grow.
And Rodney, you were there with Nerd Caliber, and I know that you've been on the show before, but for our new fans out there, introduce yourself.
I will, but I want to ask Anthony, are you convention vendors only, or do you have a retail presence or an online presence?
So we started in 2019. We actually are mostly online. Our 3 conventions we go to are pretty much Anime Boston, AEC, and Pop Cult. So if you're in New England local, you've pretty much been to all those. And it just works our schedule, but we predominantly do everything online. So everything you see in store is online. Like, I actually have my screen blurred right now, but I constantly have a bunch of merch behind me. Like, I have games right here, like Super Famicom games. I got figures right in front of me. I'm also constantly working on stuff. And like Blue Lock and everything. And then I also showed earlier, I had a bunch of friendly figures that Doug did not see, because Doug got some at our booth.
Yep.
Courtesy of Angela surprising me.
Yep.
Which I have on display on my desk.
That's awesome. So sorry, Doug, to sidetrack you there.
But that's okay.
I was really curious. So yeah, I'm the co-owner of Nerd Caliber. For anybody who doesn't know us, we're a nerd-focused media company. We have a website, we have a YouTube channel, all the social medias, and so on. And generally, our focus is on conventions, although we do all kinds of interviews and reviews and other articles and videos. And at conventions, our focus is more on cosplay than anything else. Cosplay photography, video interviews with cosplayers, and things like that. Oh, and I am first-person shooter as a photographer on Facebook. Actually, Facebook and Instagram, I think, because I don't do the site that shall not be named anymore. So
can't say as I blame you for that.
But yeah, so that's Nerd Caliber.
And hello, Francisco Garcia in the chat. Hello to Ross and John and Jason. Thank you to everybody who's tuning in. Of course, we want to welcome back our good friends Hidake and Sahara, master cosplayers. Obviously, you guys are such regulars on the show. I don't know that you need the introductions anymore. They think you probably run the show half the time. But what was your opinions from the cosplay side of Anime Boston this year? Being the veterans you are of the Masquerade for many years, as we were talking before the show, you went back-to-back years of runner-up finishes in the Masters.
So this year there was a new Masquerade coordinator, so that was new. There's been a lot of shuffling around in how the Masquerade runs, because they now do big cash prizes. So when we first started competing, Anime Boston 2015 was the first time I competed in cosplay. And when you competed at anime conventions, like all anime conventions back then, you weren't expecting a big cash prize. It was mostly like a trophy and maybe a couple gift cards. And now Anime Boston is giving away these huge cash prizes up to $5,000 for best in show. So there's a lot more competition coming in now, much higher degree. The competition itself, really small details matter. And so the Masquerade this year was really, really good. Really good performances, really good craftsmanship. Everyone was really on point from my perspective.
the other thing with it is the whole application process has changed for Masquerade. So it used to be you'd set your clock, and at noon on January 1st every year, if you were entering craftsmanship, you'd get it in as fast as possible. So we'd be there, 15 minutes before, waiting for the clock to hit. You fill out your application, it's first come, first serve for craftsmanship. The performance portion has always been reviewed before acceptance. That's changed now. They've moved to a similar system like that New York and some other conventions like SoccerCon and some other ones that have been around for a while use, where you're now putting in a portfolio, essentially, of progress photos and progress pics, and then they're selecting from that to create their list of who's going to be on, who's going to be waitlisted, and whatnot. The other thing is the actual judging process has changed. So used to be like everybody got like 10 minutes, regardless of level, how many people are in your group, whatnot. You never really felt pressured. Last year, they went to 2 minutes for your judging period. And then this year, because of feedback from last year, they've switched it up again. So now I think it's 5 minutes if you're novice or intermediate, and 10 minutes if you're master, and then additional time if you're a group. So Kevin and I this year had 12 minutes, whereas some of our other friends had 10 minutes. So there's been a lot of changes in how the whole process is working. And for some people, it's new. For veterans, we've seen it really change and had to adapt through the process.
That's interesting to hear, because I've never been in the my wife and I did the Masquerade 1 year, and unfortunately it was a year that she was dealing with health issues, so we never actually got to go on stage that year, sadly. But it's interesting to hear how things have been changing. And like you said, this year Anime Boston had a lot of changes with, as you mentioned, a cash prize for the Masquerade, which sounded amazing and explains why like the level of cosplay went up. Almost feels like from what you were saying that it went up dramatically from recent years.
Yeah, this was the second year that Anime Boston did the cash prizes, and in fact, they actually increased some of the prizes from last year to this year. There's a little bit more in some of them. So last year was the first time you really saw a push where you saw these bigger cosplayers coming in, and then this year we saw a lot of cosplayers flying in from all over the country, which was really nice to see because I've been attending Anime Boston since 2006. It's my favorite convention, but the one thing that I always wanted to see more of was bringing in bigger cosplay and making it more of a cosplay scene. So now you're having guests coming in who are cosplayers like Kaho Shibuya. You're also having these big name cosplayers coming in as judges as well. So this year was Dowen Creative Studios, Rage Gear Props, Cowbutt Crunchy Cosplay. They're these huge, internationally known cosplayers who come in as judges. So the judging and the competition that's coming in has really started to get high level.
Question: with the increased cash prize handouts, are they starting to charge registration fees, or are they just trying to do they have sponsorships paying for it, or did they just decrease everybody's attendance across the board and pull the money from there? Like, I'm just
They're
curious.
not charging registration fees. Like when we won last year, our second place prize, it was sponsored by Arta Wigs. So some of it's sponsorship, some of it's probably built into convention cost. One thing that, just as an example, at Anime Boston, if you compete, you don't get your ticket refunded. If you're a panelist, you do. Anime New York City, if you get accepted into the Masquerade, they refund your pass. So that's one big difference between the two. So in a way, you're kind of, you're not really getting anything extra from competing, and the prize is really more coming from sponsors and from your general admission ticket.
Okay, I was just curious.
And I'll just point out the increase in price from a couple of years ago to till this year.
Yeah, I mean the overall price of the convention has increased on all aspects, and you are seeing some things cut back, like the themes. They used to go all out with these themes and decorations that were universal each year, like Mecha versus Kaiju. They had decorations for that. Now you're seeing more of a general um, theme for the convention, which I assume is to cut costs because the convention itself is getting more expensive. It's more expensive to rent the Heinz. It's more expensive to run the show. Um, and so, yeah, there is a increase in the registration for the convention. I think it's $105 for next year for a 3-day pass, but that is still much lower than some of the Comic Cons that I have gone to. So I think it's hard to say where that prize money for cosplay is coming from, but it's not. I would not say that the reason why tickets are increasing is because of that.
And
No,
Even
but
with the, I'm sorry, go ahead, whoever.
Oh, go
no, I
ahead.
was just gonna say it's worth noting. It's worth noting that the convention price badges have gone up.
Yeah,
And
that's fair.
I was also going to add to that of we saw a lot of people complaining about the price hike from this year to next year with pre-reg open right now at a special price where it's just going to get pricier from there. But looking at hundred something dollars for a 3-day convention is still cheaper than if you compare it to a 3-hour football game or hockey game in the city of Boston. You're looking at
Or a
paying
concert.
2 to 3 times that amount for 3 hours of enjoyment, or maybe 4 if it goes into overtime, as opposed to what you're going to experience at a 3 or 4-day event.
And then,
I was gonna say I can also chime in on that because I've seen both ends. I work at trade shows also, and I've also been work for anime conventions other than being a vendor. A lot of people don't realize that Anime Boston is a nonprofit, and they actually do take care of their staff really well. So all the staff need a place to stay. They need food and all that comes with it. And like convention centers are not cheap at all. That's why Anime Boston has stayed at the Heinz for so long. When you factor big corporate events like PAX, where you figure that for a 4-day badge you're paying almost $250. So for 3 days of Anime Boston, you're getting more, but it's also a nonprofit. And I was gonna say, especially nonprofit anime cons, they give back to attendees, like giving the free badge for hosting a panel, different prizes, and the different amount of events they give out that big corporate events don't have. You know what I mean?
And also, one thing that we learned this year, because this year was the first year that we focused heavily on the international guests at Anime Boston, we literally had no interaction with any of the English voice acting guests. As amazing as I'm sure a lot of our fans out there are, knowing I love the autographs. The only autographs we paid for was Baby Beard, which we got a photo, got the autograph card, and but to find out that Anime Boston not only had to pay to bring these international guests in, but in many cases they had to supply the visas for them to come over, which isn't cheap. So that's where a lot of these costs go to as well, that a lot of the regular attendees never think of. There's a lot of hidden costs that we don't think of as just the normal attendees, just because we just pay the money to go and enjoy the guests that they get, but we don't have a full understanding of what's behind the scenes. So that was very interesting to learn this year, especially where they brought in a lot of Japanese guests, a lot of Japanese musician guests.
yeah, I was surprised by the number of concerts alone.
Lotus
then-
shoes.
Yep. And that was from the press side of things. That was a big difference. Was this year there was zero press interviews even allowed with the English voice actors, and we're not sure why that was. That's just something that changed.
And that's why a lot of the coverage that you'll see us post for press conference interviews is with the Japanese guests. We're still awaiting okays from some of the music guests. They wanted to preview our content before we could post it and make edits that they want. So we have a few things that still need to be edited and okayed by the guests themselves. But once we have the okay, we will post more stuff from Anime Boston.
And Jason in the chat, wasn't the idea of eventually move to the BCEC probably? That is 100% speculation. Nobody actually knows.
Mhm.
A lot of conversation in the chat talking about the anime, the 100 Girlfriends Who Really, 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 Really Love You. John Knight said he just caught up on the dub, and it has turned into his favorite harem show.
And then the question to everybody, John Knight asked basically, what's everyone's favorite dubbed anime?
I almost never listen to dub. Cowboy Bebop.
I was going to say the same thing. It was definitely Cowboy Bebop, or even like Dragon Ball Z. Like Tsunami. Like speaking of the anniversary of Tsunami, back to the Tsunami days. Like
and
Cowboy Bebop's the thing I think of it. Like you could watch it in Japanese or even like subtitle or dubbed.
And that actually did get pointed out in the chat that this year's the 27th anniversary of Toonami. I feel old now.
Yep.
And then...
And Ross in the chat says, is there anything exciting that you all are looking forward to this year?
Almost every con still to come up. Anything in particular? We're talking about anime, the return of ReZero. No, that's
Konosuba 3.
Hmm?
Konosuba season 3 just started.
And
Data Line 5.
Data Line 5.
I gotta say, Konosuba season 3 so far it's Konosuba, whereas the spin-off about Megumin wasn't Konosuba.
Yeah.
It was touching, but
it was interesting to see the backstory of how Megumin became the way she is, and it would be a good precursor to watching Konosuba.
Except that once you get into Konosuba, if you think that's the tone of the show, and you've never watched the previous seasons, and you start watching Konosuba, and you realize just what terrible people they all are, you might not like the show. I mean, if you start cold watching season 1 and go, okay, this is basically It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, but in anime, then sure.
See, I have not started my list for this season. I haven't even finished my list from last season, although we're slowly finishing up one show at a time.
I currently have 7 shows I started from this season.
I have 2.
Around there.
This season, my list is 9, one of which is My Hero Academia, and we have started 0. That being said, trying to find them all has been interesting, and I think at least 2 are not simulcast and not available in the US.
Which would those 2 be?
Oh, I have to go through the list because I did. Because, of course, I don't have the piece of paper I wrote this down on in front of me.
For me, at least, I need to finish watching the Shibuya arc for Jujutsu Kaisen and obviously more One Piece. And I do want to watch Friend Rear also because I've been hearing so many raves about it.
I tried.
Did you say Free Run?
Yeah, thank you. I was going to be that guy, but somebody else did. Thank you.
That's there.
And then Can't forget about slime.
Girls Band Cry is one of them that's not available anywhere.
That's what I thought.
Yep.
There
And-
are places
And the
you can watch it.
I have not
Uh-huh.
found it. I have not found it yet. The other
Darren
one,
can set you up with the link.
the other one thus far that I haven't found is The Raven Does Not Choose Its Master.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one either.
And then there's one on High Dive, which we'll probably not get to because we don't have High Dive.
Which one is that one?
Jellyfish Doesn't Swim in the Night.
So Jellyfish and Girls Band Cry are essentially the same story. Struggling, troubled girl meets struggling, troubled, but much more together street musician, and street musician looks like they're going to straighten out struggling girl's life as part of a band.
And then
It's, they are almost identical structure-wise as far as stories, completely different characters, and they actually have really surprisingly different tones and feels to them. But, I mean, it's like somebody went, oh, God, somebody's doing this show. We better make our own.
And then the rest is split between Crunchyroll and at least one that I know of on Disney Plus or Hulu.
Hulu has some good offerings. I'm pretty happy with the Disney bundle, having to watch, able to watch Bleach 1,000-Year Blood War. I can't wait for actually season 3. I'm actually super excited.
But no, the anime on my list that I'm the most excited for that has started but I haven't watched it yet is Bartender, which I know.
I heard good things about it.
Which I know is a remake, but I'm really looking forward to actually being able to watch that.
I actually started Bartender, and I've been enjoying it thus far.
Which means either A, that's going to be the one show we all watch, or B, I'm going to hate it.
I will say it's not my normal show to watch, but I've been enjoying it a couple of
Because as the audience knows, that's how that goes, because Doug and I do not have a whole lot in common for taste.
Go ahead, Darren.
I'm about to say, when it comes to taste, I normally share the shows with Angela. I mean, I share more with Doug, but when it comes to shows that Angela watch, I tend to be the one that would watch them instead of him.
Which means Bartender either we're all going to enjoy or I'm going to hate it.
Another show that you might like, Angela, and I watched it just because the synopsis seemed interesting, but it's not something I probably would normally watch. Train to the End of a World.
That didn't even get on my radar.
It's nuts.
Like the first episode is extremely trippy.
And now there's a whole going through the chat now. Everyone's talking about different shows. I will say, since somebody brought up, I will say out of the ones from last season that I finished, if you want something really, really interesting, Metallic Rogue, really, really good. That was the anniversary show for Studio Bones.
And Hitake Sahara, any shows that you're looking forward to this year? For this season, I should say.
There's a lot of second or third seasons of things that are continuing that we're very excited about. I'm very excited that Laid Back Camp Season 3 is airing. I'm really excited for the remake of Spice and Wolf.
Ooh.
Slime is back.
Yep.
I've got a pretty big list going.
Spice and Wolf, I started my wife and I watched the first episode, and then we went back to compare it to the original.
Ooh.
It's really close. I mean,
some
of
changes,
the artwork is different as far as backgrounds, and like the way the village looks in the first episode is different. But it's really hues so far, very close to the original series.
And I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, you're good. You're good. We watch a lot of anime, and we tend to watch it together. So pretty much whatever he's watching, I'm watching. But I mean, with how much anime is coming out a season right now, we're probably on 10 or 15 different shows that we're starting, and we'll probably finish about 10 of them by the end of the season. If they're any good, we'll end up going back and finishing the ones that we didn't finish yet. But yeah, like Slime is really good. Konosuba's season 3 is really good. We just right before coming on the show, we're watching the Kaiju number 8.
Yes, that's on my list.
So episode 1 was good, so it's definitely getting some more episodes that I'm gonna watch. But yeah, there's a lot of good ones this season. Mushoku Tensei season 3 is up. So that's
Season
very
2,
good.
Core 2.
Season 2, part 2. Yeah.
Oh
hard to
my
It
keep
looks
track
so
of those
good.
now.
Kaiju number 8.
That's,
I'm adding to my list now. Wait, searching.
also, the other one that's on my list that no one's brought up is Go Go Loser Ranger.
Haven't even heard of that one.
It's like, oh, Sentai. Okay.
But no, that's exactly what we at last season. We started with 11, kept up with 8, and are then between PAX and Anime Boston, we're now finishing them because we have 2 and 3 episodes. We're finishing them up at one show at a time, just instead of an episode of everything.
Tell me that one of them is the Apothecary Diaries.
Oh,
that was great.
Oh, Apothecary Diaries, favorite new anime. Mwah.
I can't believe that we had that and Free Ren both starting at the same time, both running for 24 episodes straight.
No, Apothecary Diaries was the first. That was the first one we finished. I've been telling you that for months.
Yeah, I know, but you're talking to the guy who just finally caught up with Jobless Reincarnation.
Fair.
And speaking of Apothecary Diaries, it's becoming one of those growing lists that's not considered. It's anime, but it's not what you'd consider source anime because it's Chinese based.
Which is honestly one of the reasons I put it on my list in the first place, because I absolutely love historical fiction, and Chinese history is one of my big interests. And speaking of last season, John Knight in the chat is asking, did you watch A Sign of Affection?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely loved it.
I have not seen it, but I think this is definitely my kind of anime already.
It is a really well done romance.
I think my girlfriend would like this. I've been trying to get my girlfriend into more anime because we watch a lot more TV, and I've been getting her more into like video gaming and anime. She's more of a tabletop person and a book reader, so I've been getting her more into anime. We've been watching like Full Metal Alchemist, and then I think what else we were trying to watch. I was trying to get her to watch like Bleach or something like that, but she doesn't like anything too gory. But something like that, or we were trying to watch Yuri on Ice. That's what we were trying to watch.
Yuri on Ice is fantastic. Honestly, stick to the slice of life.
If you like the music side of things, I know that John Knight in the chat was talking about Show by Rock, the English dub. The interesting thing about that, the English dub for Show by Rock, even the songs are dubbed in English for the first 3 seasons. Show by Rock seasons 1 and 2. And then
so I'm adding that to the list right now of what to watch for my girlfriend.
And then there's Show by Rock Mashimai Resh, and then Show by Rock Stars. Stars did not have the music dubbed, but the other 3 seasons did. There's also a group of shorts that came out as well. The characters are like animal girls. They're adorable. And it covers all kinds of music, not just pop. It's not like an idol anime or something like that. You have traditional Japanese satire music. You've got, heavy metal. You've got some rock. You've got pop. You've got a lot of different genres that are in this show. And the music is really, really good. And Mashimai Resh and Stars, they bring in a techno band too.
And
everybody's
talking. Go ahead, Darren.
Sorry, I'm following the chat. Nico, game playing idiots. Don't make them cringe. Do not recommend Umaru.
And then in the chat, John Knight says, "Have you watched Boy and the Heron?"
I have
Yes.
not, because I wanted to watch it in theater. I wanted to. It's
I
not going to happen.
I was lucky enough. Where that was in theaters around my birthday,
Mhm.
and that's what we did for my birth. That's what we did. That and a dinner was birthday.
And speaking of
So-
movies in the movie theater, this Friday, the Spy Family movie will be in theaters.
I'm excited about that.
So am I. I have tickets to go see it on Sunday. So next week, stay tuned, and I will give a 30-second spoiler-free commentary.
I had the last cinematic opportunity I had to the chance at going to, but was unable to because of the timing for it. They was Rascal Does Not Dream of a Knapsack Kid Venturing Out, and that the reason being was the sub aired at 2 o'clock on Sunday, which is when I work, and yet they chose to have the dub, which was premiering the next day at 7 o'clock in the evening.
Yep.
And the only anime movie I saw in a theater was Girls in Panzer to Film. So,
And the last one I saw prior to that was the Konosuba movie.
I saw a couple of the My Hero movies in theaters. Made the mistake. So we watched the entire show subtitled. When I bought the tickets for one of the movies, I didn't pay attention and got dubbed tickets. And let me tell you something, that's really jarring if you're so used to Japanese voices with subtitles.
Mm-hmm.
now getting back onto the topic of Anime Boston, we saw a lot of different things. A lot of people said it had a different feeling to it as opposed to years past. It actually felt like an Anime Boston pre-pandemic with the amount of people that we saw there. As you mentioned, Line Con felt like it was starting to come back because they were lines everywhere to get in for Dealers Hall, Artist Alley, panels. A lot of people weren't able to get into many of the panels and concerts because of so many people wanted to go. And I know that we were talking before the show. Hideki Sahara were able to get into the Shibuya Kaho panel like we were. But a lot of people that were at the end of the line got bumped in front of them because of poor line management.
Yeah, I mean, so as you mentioned, this is one of the busiest I've seen Anime Boston in a long time. And there's a lot of new staff, communication's different, training's different. I used to I remember I was at Line Con 08. I remember I've gone to a lot of cons across the country, and I've always been like, Anime Boston is one of the better at managing lines. And then this year it was like, what happened? But yeah, we did. It's the first time I've really seen them do 3 wide lines, and that was throwing a lot of people off. But specifically, yeah, with the Shibuya Kaho panel, that room was too small. They didn't expect as many people to go to the panel, I would guess, which I don't know why. But the line had got super long, and they decided to make it 3 wide. And so, when first it was single file, when they decided to make it 2 wide, which is pretty common for Boston, everybody just takes a step out and a step front. So it's the same number of people in essentially the same order. But for whatever reason, when it went to do 3 wide, they grabbed the back of the line and pulled the back of the line to the front. So the third row was all people from the back who are now ahead of other people, and not everybody was able to get into the panel because the room was so small. So I have issues with that, but it is, they hit capacity this year. There's been capacity for a few years. I think they've hit it once before, but they hit it early Saturday morning. Along with how busy it is, typically Hatake and I we'll go to, when Dealer's Room opens, which is usually the rush, we go to Artist Alley. We went to Artist Alley when Dealer's Room opened, because Artist Alley opens an hour earlier, and we couldn't move. It was so packed. We ended up going to Dealers, and there were less people in Dealer's Room than there were in Artist Alley.
Yep. So I was talking to an artist friend of mine who was in the back
Oh no.
corner, where the narrowest rows that they had. Partly because of that, she had one of the best Anime Bostons she's ever had, because the people were stuck there for like 20, 30 minutes. And in that same corner, a cosplayer friend of mine told me on Saturday that Friday he stood in that back corner for 20 minutes, not because people were taking his picture, although people were. It's because there was no movement in the entire aisle whatsoever. Just complete blockage till finally Anime Boston security came along and went, come on, folks, got to move this around. Get people out of here.
And they eventually turned that whole back aisle into a one-way.
That was smart.
They tried. They
Well,
tried
yeah,
to
they
turn
tried.
it into a one-way. But, like, I mean, part of that whole issue was the room that they're using is, like, it's a decent-sized room, but they left, like, 20 feet on the left side completely barren. Nothing was over there. And then that back row, they left, like, 20 feet behind that back row because they set the booth so that they would be in front of the support columns, and it left a whole lot of space behind them, which is great if you have a ton of stuff as a vendor and you need to store stuff. But it really closed in that space, and there were a lot of really good booths in that back row, so everyone's trying to go through it, and it wasn't working. And at one point I was in there, and they did announce that that back row was closed for 15 minutes while they moved booths a little bit to try to widen it, but it didn't make much of a difference. So then they tried making it one way, which helped, but there was always that rogue group that was trying to go in the opposite direction.
And that was one thing I commented on when my wife and I were walking through Artist Alley. It was how much space, like you could have fit another row of tables on that left side. And I think, Angie, you were there when I made the comment, like, it's weird to see this much space behind.
Yup.
It made the aisle wider on the sides, but that back aisle was so narrow and so much traffic, like you said, it was difficult to get through there a lot of times.
I'm wondering if there was a new person in charge of Artist Alley.
Because I know a new person in charge of Dealer's Room.
Because I know
they said they had a lot of staff changes.
Yeah.
Because an artist friend of mine was in charge of the Artist Alley for a very long time, but she stepped down like right a year or two before the pandemic. And then just kind of didn't go back to staff, went back to just being an artist. So I'm wondering if they got another new person.
So Anime Boston, all of their staff are volunteers all the way up to the very top. And at least in the last 3 or 4 events, let's not say years, because there were 2 years where there weren't any, but at least in the last 3 or 4 events, they try to rotate people with experience who are, say, like assistant level up into the main level, and then maybe rotate those people out to reduce stress, to get more experience every year or a couple of years. So that's a standard thing now for Anime Boston, is to try to get new people in top level positions. Ideally, people who have experience at the next level down, but it helps them build up a potentially wider base of people who all have experience, and then can step up into that role if needs be or want to. If, say, there's a family thing for somebody who's in the top position and can't make it that year. So it is not uncommon for, in the last few years, for probably a significant percentage of the management level staff to have turned over.
Oh yeah, And as you said, a big thing that we need to remember is these are people who are volunteering their time. They are not technically receiving financial compensation for the work they do year round for Anime Boston. Their compensation comes in hotel rooms, food, but they're also very stressed out, a lot of stuff going on, and they work really hard. So I don't want it to make it sound like we're ungrateful for the work that they're doing. We're just trying to add some constructive criticism to what we've seen from previous Anime Bostons and also other conventions that we've gone to, because everybody here has attended multiple conventions, not just one for many years. And we like to see the good and bad and try to give advice where we can to try to make every convention great, because when a convention is really good and the attendees have a really good time and the staff is really good, we've butchered for years saying a good staff can make or break a con.
Mhm.
You have positive, uh, you know, interactions with staff members at conventions. They can make a mediocre con the best con you've ever been to, but you could also have that one staff member that turns an amazing convention into the worst con experience you've ever had, and you'll vow never to go back.
Yep.
Yeah, if just want to make sure that if my comment was read that you shouldn't be criticizing volunteers, believe me, I have, I have. I want to say, that was a nice way to put this. I have talked vociferously and angrily at Repop about PAX enforcers, Anime Boston about security staff. Now, I was literally just trying to explain what the turnover structure is at Anime Boston and why you might be seeing new people in these positions. But by all means, if there's a, I don't want to use the term knife to twist. If there is a nail to hammer, hammer it.
And I would say, from a press side of things, the biggest annoyance from Anime Boston this year was the lack of communication between the higher ups in the press management system, so to speak, and the security departments. When on the Anime Boston site it says, preferred seating, not front row seating, but preferred seating for main events, and then you go to concerts, which you would consider to be a main event, and you're turned away as press, saying no, the press doesn't get any special access. Um, we wanted to go in and cover multiple concerts. Granted, there were concerts that started after other concerts had already started, and we wanted to try to get in to get a little bit of coverage of multiple events to showcase the variety of what Anime Boston had to offer, in which we were turned away from security saying that no, press doesn't get anything special. Um, that being said, for the Kaho panel, we were able to get in a little bit early to set up a camera and we didn't take front row. We sat a few rows back. Hatake and Sahara can vouch for that because they were a couple rows behind us. But we wanted to, give the fans a chance to get up there, ask questions of the guests and stuff. We wanted to cover panels. We wanted to interview cosplayers and stuff. We wanted to cover a variety of what Anime Boston had to offer. But when the security and the press team don't either there was some miscommunication. I don't want to name any names, obviously, but one of the press people that we were in communication with was trying to straighten out a lot of the confusion, which it happens, especially at a convention that size. And we understand that. We just hope that in the future everybody can kind of be on the same page. If they say that they're going to offer, like, it'd be like offering VIPs a private autograph session with guests and then turning them away saying, no, we never said that. You kind of leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
At the end of the day, it's all about communication and hopefully these things do get sorted out in some way, shape, or form for next year.
And I'm not saying, go ahead, Ange.
Especially if they continue to get these kind of Japanese guests, because this was a fantastic year for guests. Just unfortunate that they didn't really plan accordingly for popularity and put a lot of the guests in panel rooms that didn't accommodate everybody that wanted to see them.
And I think it also was a learning curve for Anime Boston, because it's, for a lot of these staff members, it's the first time that they went this heavy on international guests since the pandemic. So some of them never were involved or never really saw how big, bringing in Asuka or bringing in, some of these other Japanese musicians to put on these concerts. And Lisa was another big name that they had brought in pre-pandemic. So it's like you're bringing in 5 Japanese musicians to put on 3 concerts over 2 nights. And I personally felt like some of the rooms were too small for what the concerts were held in. They put concerts up against the Masquerade, which I don't know how full the Masquerade area was. I don't know if it was as full as you've seen it years past.
The Masquerade this year, the back of the floor I didn't see packed. Nor like the Masquerade has been up and down over the last several years. Over like sometimes it's really packed, sometimes it's really not. It used to be that the balcony was full and the floor was full and you had to get seat tickets because everybody wanted into the mask. It was the big event on Saturday. And because of that, they started putting other large events at the same time in order to cut down on the amount of people who were trying to be in the mask. And now I'm seeing a lot less people at the Masquerade. It's still a very popular event, but it definitely was not as packed as I've seen it in years past. Whether that was because of the multitude of other things that were going on, or if it was because specifically there was a concert up against it, I don't know. I feel like last year there was a concert up against it as well. Or
This
maybe
year-
it might have been Lava.
This year, you guys were going up against the Baby Metal and the Hayazaki and Kaya concert, and then the Raj Ramaya concert.
The Lady Beard.
Yeah. So Baby
Okay.
Beard, Lady Beard, and Shuzu and Ryu.
Yeah.
But the Baby Beard concert was absolutely packed, and when they were done, people left. They rushed out to try to get autographs and merchandise and stuff like that. And I thought the Lady Beard concert or the Baby Beard concert was fantastic. We did get some video footage from that, which we need to edit, and we'll upload that once we can. Unfortunately, a wrestling match broke out, and we weren't able to get any video footage of that due to the fact that we were seated so far back from the stage, and the cameras didn't really catch up to what was going on until probably a third of the way through. But it was still entertaining. And fun little side note, the wrestler who came out on stage and went after Lady Beard, who, for those of you who don't know, Lady Beard is also a professional wrestler, not just a musician, which is why they staged everything. He actually followed our Instagram page. So that was kind of funny to see that he enjoyed the content that we put up. But it was a lot of fun from what we were able to experience of Anime Boston. We love going to that convention. I don't want anybody to think that, because some of the press things were a little bit off or a little confusing means that we're never going to go back. That's not what I'm saying at all. Obviously, we want to continue to work with Anime Boston and cover that convention for years to come, because it is a con that we like. I wouldn't have drove 6.5 hours to get there if it wasn't a convention that I love going to.
And Anime Boston has had, every convention does, and Anime Boston certainly has had its share of, difficulties and problems every single year. That's just the way it's always been. It's the way it's always gonna be. Sorry, I'm reading the
random
chat.
comment that came through that I thought would be interesting to post up there.
So yeah, like 2 years ago, the first year back after the pandemic shutdown, I was actually staffing. I was the photo manager for their photo department at AB. And we had on our press team, a guy came up from Connecticut specifically to interview one of the guests, had prearranged it with the guest and Anime Boston, and then Anime Boston just completely screwed it up. Screwed up the scheduling, forgot to get, the person to where they were supposed to be. They spent most of the rest of the afternoon trying to make something happen so that we could have that one-on-one with the guest. It just never happened. And that's just the way it is. It's sometimes things get screwed up, either because a guest or somebody else does something that the convention just can't, there's no way they can fix it. Or sometimes the convention itself, just something slips through cracks. You're juggling a million cats.
Mm-hmm.
So,
oh yeah,
everyone, always, every convention, there's always going to be the, oh wow, that got screwed up.
And looking at like the vendors and dealers, like the Vendors Hall, Artist Alley, I know that pre-pandemic the rooms were switched. You had the dealers hall on the first floor, Artist Alley on the second floor. And when they made that switch initially, I kind of didn't like it. I always thought that Artist Alley felt like it had better flow and better setup on the second floor. And part of it, I think, is because of that like partition or that area in the middle where there's phone charging areas, bathrooms that separated the dealer's area from section 1 to section 2. I thought that always fit and felt like it fit better for the vendors hall as opposed to Artist Alley on one side, the tabletop gaming and autographs on the other side. Anthony, I don't know if I know you said that you vended Anime Boston for a few years. Were you there when the dealer's hall was on the first floor? Or?
I was not there when it was on the first floor. I've always been there when they're second floor. So pretty much post-COVID, they were on the second floor.
So actually, a long time ago, when we first started going, dealer's room was second floor, and then it got switched to first floor, and now it's back to second floor. So, I mean, honestly, the square footage, looking at the blueprint, should be the same.
It's pretty much a mirror same, but the problem with the second floor, people don't realize it cuts into the like the big
big auditorium.
Yeah, the auditorium is less space. So technically, if it was the first floor, they would have more space. But I understand why they do on the first floors, because they manage the game room down there, and they also have Artist Alley down there. So I think and I feel like that makes Artist Alley even smaller because they're trying to do other things there too, like video gaming.
I mean, Anthony, you can probably tell us better than this, but looking at the blueprints and the vendor list this year, one of the things I noticed is it looked like a lot of vendors who'd been there for a long time had rented more space, and so there were fewer vendors.
That is true, actually, because I rented more space myself. So I went from one 10 by 10 to a second 10 by 10. And I think a lot of vendors that did that. That happened to me even when I was starting out. I only did one booth, and I noticed a lot of vendors getting bigger and bigger. But the problem is what happens with anime vendors is Anime Boston, like every other con, is they want to make sure that they have a vendor who brings a different amount of items. And that's still a problem with, I think, the unknown is having somebody who brings, fake merch from Japan, like people buy stuff from AliExpress and everything and try to sell it, and AI generated art like that. That's another thing they added this year, was making sure that nobody's selling any AI generated stuff. And that's a problem in the anime community, is some people will try to say, hey, something they created and sell it as retail as their own. I don't see this much on Artist Alley. I more see it on the retailer end in the dealer's hall. And from talking from the people at Anime Boston that I know, they rather have the quantity they know And also when they approve vendors, they try to approve vendors who are very different. Because if you notice, if you look at all the vendors, like I was going to say, probably 30-40% are comic book vendors, or they sell posters, you know what I mean? Or t-shirts. Like it's a lot of the same vendors you see copy and paste. Like I'm not saying my booth is very different, but you see my stuff is a lot of old and new, but it's a lot of keychains and a lot of figures. And then video games, you'll see a lot of vendors who are just doing like straight t-shirts, straight posters, or they're a comic book vendor that's also selling anime stuff.
And also a big thing that I noticed this year as opposed to years past, you did not have a Crunchyroll booth. You did not have a High Dive or a Sentai Filmworks booth like you've seen in years past. Obviously, we know why Funimation wouldn't have been there because of the closure of Funimation in early April. But some of the big names that always had booths there, and I know High Dive had a special going on with a lot of the guests they brought in. But it was interesting to see that these big vendors and these big anime companies weren't represented in person with booths.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting because Anime Boston, it's never been like industry heavy. It's always been like the fan convention where it's very fan driven, panel heavy. But they did used to have Crunchyroll and Funimation and High Dive and Sentai Filmworks. And I mean, you can remind me about last year, but I don't think I saw any big industries last
I think
year.
there was a High Dive one there last year.
High Dive
There
was
a-
there
Last
last
year it
was.
was
High
a
Dive
high
was there.
dive.
Yeah.
Was it Aniplex there?
I haven't
Not
seen Aniplex
recently.
in a long time.
Yeah, last time I saw Aniplex was a couple years ago, like 2 or 3 years ago.
Last time I remember Aniplex was Sword Art Online when that came out, because I have that autographed wall scroll. But
And I remember Bang Zoom pre-pandemic there. That's how we got introduced to them.
Yeah, so there really hasn't been industry in the same, like 2010 Anime Boston, there was industry. 2015, there was a lot of industry. Now we're not seeing so much industry at Anime Boston, which
So,
I mean, on one hand, being someone who also competes at Anime NYC, which is like pure industry, it's really nice to have Anime Boston be like almost entirely fan panels and stuff like that. But you do expect for a convention the size of Anime Boston to at least have some industry representation.
well, to be fair, the only reason I can see for the lack of industry panel is one dang company owns everything at this point except for Sentai Filmworks
That might make, I mean, you're right. Sony owns Funimation and Crunchyroll, but
and Aniplex.
and Aniplex.
But what about high dive?
High Dive is Sentai.
High Dive is Sentai. But like Anime NYC last year, the entire top floor of the Javits Center was Crunchyroll only. It was all Crunchyroll events. It was like a separate convention within the convention. It was crazy.
And that actually makes some, given the Crunchy has a New York City office, that does actually make sense.
Yep.
And I know they were trying to promote a bunch of stuff. That I have a friend that works out of the New York office, and that's about what I am allowed to say. But no, the lack of industry for this year surprised. Now that I think about it, I was surprised that there wasn't anything at all.
Yeah, because usually Anime Boston, you're good for at least like one High Dive industry panel talking about upcoming stuff that Sentai is putting on, and then you're good for a Funimation / Crunchyroll panel of this is what to look forward to. And I don't remember seeing any of those on the schedule.
The other thing is this year there wasn't as much in the way of anime premieres either.
There were 2 movie premieres. I do remember seeing that.
But comparing this year to last year, there was a lot more premieres last year.
Yeah.
It almost felt like Anime Boston was trying to use this as a transition year of where they wanted to focus more on international guests. Yes, they still had a good amount of quality English voice acting guests, but it's been a long time since I've seen this many Japanese guests. Not just the musicians; they had a voice actress, they had content creators and artists and stuff like that. But the sheer number that they brought in was almost mind blowing because I don't remember seeing this heavy of a Japanese guest list for Anime Boston.
Last year I did one press panel with a Japanese manga artist. And that was it.
So I just looked in the guidebook app for this past Anime Boston just to check. High Dive was a sponsor, and according to this, they had 3 panels.
Oh, great.
2 Friday and 1 on Saturday.
Okay.
I think another thing that people don't realize is a lot of vendors, especially because like I said, I work on the big trade show side and I work on the small side. And I have a lot of friends who work in the industry, in the video game anime industry. Like same thing with Angela, is a lot of companies don't want to put the money out. They want to sponsor the event, but they might not want to send people out or the booth because they understand the costs. I'm always very big and transparent. A booth Anime Boss, especially for a dealer, is starting over $1,000. And think about a booth for let's say High Dive or Crunchyroll. They're not going to get one booth. They're going to get a booth that's 10 times the size. So that's $10,000 to $20,000 as a booth. And then they got to fly the staff and fly the booth to build it up. So in turn for a convention, even like an anime convention, they might be dropping $25,000 to $50,000 on one convention for a weekend. But they could just put their name on it for a quarter of the cost.
That's very true.
Now, generally, sponsorship deals will, and I don't know for sure that this is the case with Anime Boston, but will include some sort of discount or even a completely free booth space as part of the sponsorship. That may not be the case with Anime Boston, but that's pretty common with a lot of conventions.
Yeah.
But it is still, particularly getting personnel here. Yeah, that's
Boston is not cheap. Even if the booth, even hypothetically, let's say the booth was free, you got to have at least 2 to 3 staff.
Yep.
And that's flights, which New York to Boston is not nearly as cheap as you would expect. Hotel, which as a direct result of a tower of the Sheraton, I believe it was, that got taken over by Northeastern.
Yep.
So there's less hotel space. Hotels in Boston are very
ridiculous,
expensive compared to other cities. And then you got to factor in their all the incidentals, food.
Yeah, the cost has gone up. Like I was gonna say, a lot of us have been going to like Anime Boston and other conventions for a long time. I've been going to Anime Boston for almost like 10, 15 years. No, more than 10 to 15 years, but 15 plus years. And when I first went to Anime Boston, you could get a whole weekend for maybe $500. It was very cheap. And now you're pushing over $1,000 just for 3 days, and which is wild. But I understand it's limited space and costs have gone up. Even the badge, I remember the badge used to be like $50 for a whole weekend. You could buy it at the door and not worry about it.
Some of that is simply inflation.
Definitely.
Some of that, at least in recent years, is a direct result of not every industry has bounced back from the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And some of that is just space. And some cities are just expensive. I mean, Boston and New York are 2 of the more expensive cities.
This year, I stayed at a hotel in Randolph, and even when you factor in the cost of the hotel, the price of parking in a parking garage for 3 days, and fuel back and forth, it was cheaper to do that than to stay at any of the hotels that I found in Boston for the same amount of time, and it was only a half-hour drive each way.
That's not too bad. That's a train ride right there.
It's faster than a train ride. Like if in years past, if we didn't stay in Boston, I would park at the Quincy Adams T stop and take the red line to the green line to the Hines, and that right there is an hour travel time.
There's a reason. See, for Anime Boston, we do hotel, but we only do hotel for Friday night and Saturday night. For PAX is when we don't bother because of how close we live to the highway. And subsequently, Seaport's even more expensive.
Oh, I did like I was talking about earlier before we started the show. Perfect example is I've been working like 4 events this past few weeks. So I did Anime Boston, I did PAX, I did CT GamerCon, which is the weekend last weekend, and this week I had a 1-day event at a college. So I can tell you that staying in hotels anywhere is expensive. And think about 3 events where I needed to get a hotel. I got a hotel on Friday night just to, make it a con experience. But hotels every weekend is expensive. It adds up too quickly.
Yep.
And with PAX East and Anime Boston being back to back, just the being able to go home and sleep in your own bed makes a big difference. But it does make the experience a different convention experience.
It definitely does.
And from our perspective as people who compete in the Masquerade and everything, we've stayed once not at the convention center and took the tea in. This was before we started competing, but we were still cosplaying, and as cosplayers, and especially people competing in the Masquerade, it's just like it doesn't make sense to not stay at either the Sheraton or the Marriott or one of the other hotels that's really close by, because yes, the Masquerade is Saturday, but we also generally have judging on Saturday, and so it's like even if you're only thinking about judging and then doing the walk-on and the Masquerade, it's still pretty much eat your whole Saturday because you have to plan on suiting up, doing makeup, all that stuff, and it takes away like your whole day. And to think about that for people who don't stay at the hotels and come in, it's like I don't know how they would do it.
Well, on top of that,
can't.
On top of that, you and I mean, we're generally doing armor outfits, so our outfits are a little bit bigger too. So coming in, on the tee or whatever would be a bit of a pain in the butt. But there's the other thing, and this is more so since we've gotten older. Like I remember in my early 20s, I would do like a 14-hour day in full armor. It's fine, whatever. But now that I'm in my 30s, I can't do that anymore. And having the ability to go back to your room at the hotel and swap out of cosplay for a few hours, or the people who do like 6 cosplay for the weekend, which good on them. I don't have that kind of energy anymore. But that ability to go back to the hotel and swap out of cosplay is really, really nice to have. So we generally stay at the hotel, and it's better if it's connected. Obviously, Anime NYC, it's not connected, so we have to walk like a 10 to 15 minute walk every time we go to or from the hotel. So Anime NYC, we try to really not leave the convention as much. It's kind of like the old times when you couldn't leave Anime Boston, or you would be in a 4-hour line to get back in. But now, like, Anime Boston is so easy to get in and out because they have the scanners that you can just walk through. It is a nice relief to have those hotel rooms to go back to.
And I think that's another factor to take in. Like I mentioned before, and as our viewers know, last week we celebrated 10 years of the podcast, meaning that I've been attending these conventions for over 10 years and seeing the change. Obviously, as we've gotten older, we've gotten wiser. We've gotten, seen how things have changed and have things that we like and dislike. And as we've matured going to these conventions, we're now wanting different things out of these conventions than we may have wanted 10, 15, 20 years ago. Like Hitaki was saying, they're not in their early 20s or teens or whatnot. We talked to a cosplayer on Sunday at Anime Boston who said that she's been attending Anime Boston for 10 years. She's 20. So she's been cosplaying half of her life at Anime Boston. A, it makes me feel old because I'm in my 40s. And B, it gives you a whole different perspective of, okay, well, at that age, you had more energy. You were excited about doing this stuff. You could dress up. We know many cosplayers, like you said, Atake, who might wear 3, 4, 5, 6 outfits in 3 days or 4 days. And a lot of us, as we've gotten older, we don't have the stamina to stay up as late as we used to. It takes, as press, it takes a lot of energy out of you from getting around, setting up cameras, doing interviews, the interactions with people that you don't really think of. And it's funny to see how, as I've gotten older, I can't hang like I used to. Think of Anime Boston 2015, 2016, where we'd be up at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning going to panels still. 9, 10 o'clock, I'm like, damn, I'm tired. I just want to go back to the hotel and relax. I know we missed some of the good 18 plus panels at that point in time, but when you working, and Anthony, you know it from the vendor standpoint, after a day of being in the dealer's hall and you have all that interaction, all that traffic, all that energy going through, you're exhausted by the time that day is done.
I was definitely exhausted, but I also was having people in my room. Angela can tell you that I'm still like in that old crowd of Anime Boston where I met some of my good friends, meeting them at the lobby, going to 18 plus panels, and like the same people as now that I'm older and I run a business, I can have people in my hotel room and facilitate that. So I had a nice suite that I had people come up and just say hi and pop in.
And it's a lot more chill.
Yeah, not like crazy as like we used to be, drinking shots and everything. No, everybody's just like relaxing. I was sitting down on the sofa just relaxing.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. I basically went from one chill group of people in one room to down to the lobby where a completely different group of my friends were all hanging out, and it was very chill.
Yeah, I agree. I think Anime Boston, other than I think a lot of the people that saw the growing pains of like Saturday being capped and how busy like the artist alley was, dealer's room was, and all the lines everywhere and like different panels capped. I think this year, from what I saw from my friends, and not really leaving the dealer's room so much, but going around, it felt like the sense of community, and like it felt good to be at an anime con, like seeing people cosplay and see people have fun and go enjoy themselves.
I will say, actually recognizing cosplay from new content made me happy.
Yes. I was having those conversations with people. It was amazing.
Like, because for so long, if I didn't recognize a cosplayer, there was an 80 to 90% chance it was League of Legends. and then after that, it was, I don't recognize it, so it's probably
Genshin.
Thank you. Genshin Impact, and now there's another one.
Honkai.
Okay, Star Wars.
Yep.
I actually carry merch for that.
When I see one of those cosplayers, I just go, "You're from Genshin, Honkai, Impact Star, something, whatever the hell it is, right?" And they go, "Yeah." Like, all right, get over here, take a picture.
And
I have no idea what any of them are.
And I will say, I did not realize Apothecary Diaries had that much love. So to see people actually cosplaying from that made me so happy.
And I was excited because I didn't get a lot of photographs on my phone from the weekend, unfortunately, because of running around and sickness and stuff like that. But it was the photo that we used as our picture for the start of the show was of 3 Marin cosplayers. All of the cosplays that Marin wore in My Dress Up Darling. We found a group of 3 young ladies who cosplayed one of each of them.
Because some of them ain't convention friendly.
Oh, definitely not.
I guess, look, convention friendly or not, they're always pushing the limits
This is true.
I remember when nudist beach was a thing, and also when socks was a thing. I have a picture of a socks cosplayer.
And when when I was going through registration to get our badges, there was somebody at the customer service booth that was dressed as Lady Satsuki in the skimpy Lady Satsuki outfit.
Yeah.
And
In
I've
the
seen
final
Didn't leave much to the
armor
imagine.
version.
Yeah,
Yep. And
didn't
I've
leave
seen
much to
the
the
skin.
imagination. Kudos to her for wearing it, but my goodness, not something I was expecting to see.
And don't forget the skimpy Ryuko Matoi. I've seen several of those as well.
Yep. And in almost every instance where I see those, there's some like they're wearing tights that have been cut right to the point where the strap hides the fact that they're tights or something. This cosplayer was not doing that. This cosplayer was in essentially a sling bikini with armor. So I was like, okay.
The Lady Satsuki one?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we
Gallery's
saw
up on Nerd Caliber.
Go over and check it out.
Saturday, Gallery 2, I think. Anyway.
And serious question in the chat from Ross Knight, or from Ross Luck. Sorry, John and Ross, I'm confusing the names there. Serious question in the 10th anniversary this year in memory of Casey Kasem passing away 10 years ago in 2014. Do any of you have a favorite Shaggy moment from Scooby-Doo?
Oh, geez. I can't think. I watched Scooby-Doo growing up. I haven't seen Scooby-Doo in a long time. I can't think of a single Shaggy moment.
Is it bad that I wasn't really aware of Casey Kasem and who he was until one of the radio stations I listened to started playing the American Top 40 countdowns where you hear Casey practically every week.
I grew up on that, man. He was
Ditto.
Every Saturday, 1970s. Yeah. I can't think of. I mean, Shaggy is he's a wonderful character, but he does nothing that would be a character moment that I can think of that would stand out. I mean, I always think of his interaction with other people, like Vincent Price when they did the horror themed season. But yeah, I can't think of any specific Shaggy moment. Sorry.
And then John Knight's question that Doug skipped over. What's your favorite isekai?
ReZero.
I liked season 1. I couldn't get into season 2 of ReZero. I don't know why.
Season 2 is tough.
But I also like Data Live. I loved seasons 1, 2, and 3, and season 4 I couldn't do. And I tried in Japanese and in English, and both times they lost me about 3-4 episodes in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Favorite isekai?
Not an isekai, by the way, but yeah.
Favorite isekai? I watch a lot of them, and so I'm just gonna say the one that I'm like off the top of my head at the moment is Mushoku Tensei, Jobless Reincarnation. So it's
very close number 2.
It's very good, but it's the thing that's sticking out in my mind at the moment. But I've seen lots, and there's a lot that I like.
I saw a list somebody put up on Facebook. They posted like 25 isekais, and I had watched 19 of them. And after talk of Land of Leadale, I've now watched 20 of them because I binged the entire series last night.
Here's the question, Doug. How many of them had the same protagonist?
Well, when you quite a bit of them have very similar like cookie cutter things. And I've always said that one of my guilty pleasures is Smartphone, which a lot of people rag on because season 1 was just kind of terrible. But I enjoyed the fact that season 2 actually they put a storyline in, and they actually were working towards a goal. So I thought season 1 was a fun clear your mind, just watch something stupid and funny. And then season 2, it got a little more serious of, okay, now we're trying to search for this and we're trying to accomplish a goal.
See,
My,
I just
my favorite isekai of all time, hands down, is How a Realist Hero Rebuilt the Kingdom.
That's a good one.
That's a solid choice.
Mhm.
See, I was thinking, I was like, Isekai Quartet. And then I was like, oh, wait, my
That's
favorite
4 different.
Isekai is an Isekai Quartet. And that would be the Saga of Tanya the Evil. Love that show.
Also a good one.
Yep.
Yep, and
I-
I'm in the minority here. There's exactly 2 shows that have the isekai listing that I have watched and enjoyed. One of them just finished, being Fluffy Paradise. It was adorable. And the
I
other
enjoyed that one as well.
and the other being questionable whether or not it's an isekai, but Drifters.
Ross in the
I would
chat
have-
says his is Wise Man's grandchild.
I would have to say mine is either Jobless Reincarnation or Reincarnated as a Slime.
Yeah. Yep.
But
Because the world building with Slime is top tier.
and this is where I think we get into the Doug and I give each other a hard time for ultimately the same thing. Because it boils down to I don't like isekai for very similar reasons to why Doug doesn't enjoy most of the shonen that I do.
We have the fun banter back and forth of isekai is trash and shonen is overrated.
Yep,
Mhm.
Yes, on both. Yes.
I
exactly.
mean, I like Sword Art Online, so that is
Sword
my
Art
favorite isekai.
Okay,
Sword Art Online's
Sword Art is
first
great.
season until they got to the
Yeah.
end was really interesting.
I agree with that.
Sword Art Online minus one specific story arc, which I believe was season 1, part
Alpine.
2.
Yep.
That story arc was garbage, but the rest of the show was amazing.
Aliciazation.
Alice was fantastic. Gun Gale was really good as well.
But Gun Gale
Congratulations on
was
season 2 for that.
a separate, like a spin-off that was written by, I can't remember the name of the
Season-
writer director.
Season 3 of Sword Art was the first was the Gun Gale arc, and then it got a spin-off.
So you're not talking about the spin-off.
No, I'm talking about just Sword Art as a whole.
The spin-off was really good. Better
Oh,
than
agreed.
Sword Art
Spinoff
Online.
is good. Yeah, I watched the spinoff too. I was surprised with that.
I
And
enjoyed
the
that.
spinoff's getting a second season soon.
I
It is?
know.
That's cool.
Allegedly allegedly next winter. I don't know. But it's on my list.
And having just recently finished catching up on Jobless Reincarnation, because I was very late to the party for this show, partially because for a long time I was watching 10 to 15 animes a season for multiple years. So it wasn't until a couple months ago that my wife and I sat down and for her rewatching Jobless Reincarnation from the beginning and introducing me to it. We've just watched the most recent episode. Like we watched all of season 1 and season 2 part 1 in English, and then we watched the 2 episodes that dropped for season 2 part 2 in Japanese. The second one, which actually it had been dropped for like 2 hours when we watched it today.
Yeah.
And it has been a very entertaining story. It's different from a lot of the other isekais. It's not your cookie cutter like harem slice of life, mindless, just sit back and enjoy some stupidity isekai. There's a lot of thought that goes into this, a lot of character development that's gone into this show, and I can understand why Darren has been on my case and my wife has been on my case for a long time of I need to watch this show. That being said, I've seen a lot of wars that have happened on Facebook and social media over Best Girl. A lot of the people saying, I know Angela's shaking her head because this always comes up at some point in the show.
Yep.
Who is Best Girl? And it's usually between Roxy or Eris. And then I saw comments of Best Girl 1 being the childhood friend. Spoiler alert. But I'm curious, who do you think was the better female counterparts with Rudius?
That's a good question. I mean, all of the female characters in that show have their own special role. Like they all fill their own role, and I think that within the point they are in the series, they are the best counterpart. So that's my personal opinion. I don't know what others think, but
I like that answer because it's everybody comes into Rudy's life at a different point in time in his growth from an adolescent into a young man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And
I think you have to take Roxy off that list because Roxy, while they were, in proximity to each other, was in no way a potential counterpoint to Rudy, except in Rudy's fantasies of a 39-year-old man in a 5 to 7-year-old's body. So all of the others, Sylphie, Eris, they count because they came into his life at an age and at a time when they were, people who he could connect to. Roxy there's just no way Roxy even understood that he had any sort of potential, possible feelings or that there could be any sort of, relationship there. I don't think she counts. I don't think she could be considered a, in your terminology, a counterpoint to Rudy. I think that, in the waifu argument, sure, but that has nothing to do with Rudy. That's who do you think is the hottest, whatever.
True.
So,
but I'm also saying with the way the story's going, keywords yet. At the point in time that they met, I can agree. But don't forget, they're bound to cross paths again soon with the way season 2 is going.
Yes. No, I agree.
And I'm curious as to what's going to happen when Eris comes back in the picture based off of what's going on with Rudius and Sylphie.
So I made the mistake of reading
source
some
material?
Discussions about things that happen in the light novels further down the road. His relationships get worse.
So like his father.
Yeah, that's a great comparison.
Hey, look. I have something I'm going to send Doug, and maybe he can put it on screen. Let me see if I can find it, because I found it the other day.
While Darren's looking for that, back in the speaking of isekai, while we're on this, Ross wants to know people's opinions on Finest Assassin.
Oh, that one is good.
It was okay. Good. It was not the Arifureta crap that I thought it was going to be. I mean, it was yet another super overpowered protagonist, but having the guy start out as a older, super experienced, person in the real world, as opposed to, just some office worker who gets run over by Truck-kun or whatever it happens to be, was an interesting, different take. I thought that was pretty cool.
And let's see if I can pull this up here.
And then for entertainment time, fun fact, everyone here can agree that Ghost Stories is the best English dub anime of all time.
I have to agree with that.
It's legendary, I'll give you that.
Yeah. It's a classic of shitposting anime.
Precisely.
That's a great graphic. I like that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Darren did a good job in coming across this and sending it. There's Horny and Innocence with Eris. There's Innocence and Horny
with Ghislaine.
Balance with Roxy. A Pure Soul.
Sylphie.
And then there's the Grey Rats.
Yep.
Which I think that pretty much sums up the show.
Talking about isekai, I just want to shout out for anybody who thinks they might want to watch one from last season. The Wrong Way to Use Healing Magic.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
summed it up to my partner, Nerd Caliber, Manny, just this morning. Imagine you're a DM and the healer in your party turns to you and says, wait a minute, can I just self-heal myself while I'm beating the absolute crap out of people? That's the premise of this show, and it's funny, it's exciting, it's a really neat take on a concept where you literally go, that never occurred to me. Let's see how they play this out. And they play it out pretty well.
Oh,
What was
I
the
just
title of
find
that one?
The Wrong Way to Use Healing Magic.
It got a lot of comparison with the keywords healing magic because of redo of healer.
Yeah,
So-
which is not even remotely anything like that malodorous pile of garbage.
Gabriel
To be fair,
Anna.
they got creative with that one. I'm sorry.
Gabriel Anna, who I believe is a newcomer to the chat. How do y'all feel about the Fruit of Evolution?
Garbage.
2 episodes done. Could not take more than 2 episodes.
I watched the first
both
season.
seasons.
I watched the first season and started like 1 episode in season 2, and that was enough for me. But I'm also one of the ones that somehow got through an entire season of Conception.
You had
don't
to
talk
bring
about that
that up.
Really? Wow.
Yes, I did too.
My wife and I don't know why we got through the whole season of that. Maybe hoping at some point it got better, but it was so bad. We've had voice actors on the show who don't like admitting they were a part of it.
Tonight
one
on
episode,
Spicy Anime Confessions.
one
Doug
episode
says-
for me.
I'm sorry,
And
I missed that, Angela.
I watched 1 episode and nope, done.
Yep. And mind
You
you,
didn't even.
give me all the ecchi, for sure. That was like, here's a cliff. Somewhere down at the bottom of that is that show. Nope.
Nope. I would have rather watched Aiken, and I couldn't stand Aiken. It was only 2 episodes.
Okay.
There's a reason. It was a regular anime, but it was only 2 episodes. And the manga I've heard was a lot more wholesome, but the 2 episodes they made out of that, oh my gosh. And the fact they dubbed it, that was the even funnier part.
Yeah, I bet that's not on somebody's CV.
And you're talking about isekais. I have to ask your opinion on Vending Machine.
I liked it.
I did too.
Mm-hmm.
I went into that show expecting it to be absolutely terrible because it was like the
Same.
first isekai I saw that I wanted to rip on and I wanted to make fun of because it's like, here's the perfect premise to just tear apart an isekai. The isekai trash guy, the guy who loves these shows, finally has something he can just destroy. And it had no right to be as good as it was. Angela refuses to watch it on premise, which that's totally fine.
I just haven't had time.
Angela, they establish the way his system of doing things works, and they never vary from it. He is forced to come up with very innovative and creative solutions based on what he's allowed to do. And it's one of the very few isekai I've ever seen where there is literally 0 power creep. If you can't buy the fact that he came up with this solution based on what they established in the first couple of episodes, they failed, and they don't fail. It's like, wow, okay, that's smart writing.
And Ross is just keep going with the isekais. How do people feel about Tales of Wedding Rings?
I've not
Ran
seen
out
it.
of time, didn't watch.
Yeah, I watched 3 episodes and then just
It was okay.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. I don't even know if I'd put it in my top 30.
No. Well, I never finished, so
I did finish season 1. I mean, it was entertaining to get through, but it's not something I would rush right back to rewatch.
Yeah.
Something like, like I said, Smartphone. I've seen multiple times. Um, how Realist Hero Rebuilt the Kingdom. I've seen it in its entirety at least 5 or 6 times.
wow.
Because I love that series, and I love the way that the storyline went, and I love how the last episode ties into the first and still leaves you wanting more. Like, I would love to see another season of that show.
Speaking of that, here's an underrated isekai series that people often forget about. So I'm a Spider. So what? That whole series did not make sense until the final couple of episodes. And it was one of the more creative ones. Because for half the show, you literally just follow around a girl that's being reincarnated as a spider, just trying to survive.
Yeah, the problem is with that is that you get to the end and you go, "Oh, so here's the real story," but it's the end of the first season. And as far as I know, there's no announcement of a second one.
Not
So
yet.
it's like,
still.
come on. If that's the real story, let's see that story.
It was still one of the more interesting written ones that I've come across, at least recently, anyway. Highly underrated.
All right, so non-isekai, who has watched Bang Brave, Bang Bravern?
Never heard of it.
Never heard of it.
Just this last season. It is a mech anime that starts and sits very squarely in the realistic sci-fi mech robot genre until about 3/4 into the first episode, and then suddenly a straight up not even Gundam. Who's the most ridiculous, sentient, crazy, superpowered robot from an anime you can think of? That's what shows up. Voltron shows up. It's not Voltron, it's Bravern. But just like suddenly the character nature of what the show is goes sideways. And it is the most blatantly, wonderfully, hilariously, not even coded, gay mech robot anime you could even imagine. It's just a hoot start to finish. And great, exciting, crazy exciting, superpowered robot battles and giant swords and energy beams and all this stuff. And that's just barely touching the surface of how just nuts it is.
That show sounds like it would be up Angela's alley.
Yeah, Angela, I think you would really love this. Look up
it's on Crunchyroll.
the OP and just watch the OP.
You know what? What did you say the name of the show was?
Bang Brave, Bang Bravern.
I did see it on Crunchyroll.
Yeah, just watch the OP on like YouTube or something, and if that doesn't catch you, I don't know what would.
Side games.
I'm not a mecha person.
Was this originally a mobile game?
No, it's a Cygames, one of the Cygames original IPs as a just an anime.
No, it is. It actually is an original.
Yeah,
because
I guess a lot of mobile games become anime, or animes become mobile games.
You know what? I will put this one on the watch list.
Okay. She'll get to it sometime in the next 20 years.
No, I'll put it on the watch list on Crunchy tomorrow when we're going through anime.
I still say she needs to put vending machine on there, but she won't.
No.
You should. It'll be a surprise.
Maybe someday. Today is not that day.
Well,
She's still waiting for the free run hype to die down before starting that.
uh,
That
And
was I anticipated a lot of free run cosplay. I saw even more, and I called every single one I saw over to my photo studio. Come on, it's free run. Get over here.
The Fern cosplayer with the Heron in the Mimic. Did you see them walking
Oh
around?
yes,
didn't.
I
yes.
did not see them.
They were so good. It was a duo. I have them on Instagram, but there was a Fern cosplayer and then someone carrying around a mimic chest with Fearon's legs sticking out of it.
Damn it. I missed that. Oh, that would be hilarious.
I think I saw a picture of that, but I never actually saw them. And I was surprised because Friday and Saturday, I saw more ferns walking around than I saw free runs. And the only free runs, I think of like the 6 or 7 different free run cosplayers I saw Saturday and Sunday, only 2 actually had the staff with them.
Yep.
So a lot of free runs walking around without the staff.
There was one carrying around the suitcase. I saw them.
Yep.
And then there was one time I went around a corner and there were 3 Fearons sitting right next to each other on a bench.
Yeah. Yeah, they were a group. They came over as a group to the studio. There was one in the winter outfit.
Oh, I didn't see them.
I didn't see that one. I
Very
saw
good.
one Himmel.
2 Himmels.
I saw a couple Starks.
I saw a Stark walk by. Didn't get a chance to call out. I saw one of the Himmels was in a group that was the original Heroes Party. So they had an Eisen, a Himmel, and a Heitel or a Heiter.
That's awesome.
I don't know who's which. This is Himmel, I'm guessing.
Yep, Himmel's
Yep.
the blue hair.
Okay.
And then the other thing, the other show I saw a lot of cosplay from was Has Been Hotel.
Oh, definitely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I noticed that too.
I just finished the series at the behest of someone, and that is the first English show I have watched in God knows how long.
My wife got me to watch Has Been Hotel, and I actually enjoyed it.
It was like a cross with Hotel Transylvania and Panty and Stocking in terms of the language.
And from what little I've seen as far as like teaser clips and from what everybody's told me, that one falls under not necessarily for me, but hey, with so much content available these days, there's something for everybody.
And Ross in the chat says, speaking of Heroes Party, besides Darren and Doug, who has seen Beast Tamer?
I want to say we probably have, but it's
Yeah.
QC's
Yeah,
is
I
back.
think I have, but I don't recall.
It's the one where the kid's kicked out of the Heroes Party because all he is a beast
Yes.
tamer.
Yep,
Baby
we've
Tank
seen
is
it.
the
Yep,
most
seen it.
the most powerful species known to that universe.
Yeah,
Starting
like
with a
that.
cat, then a dragon, then the elves.
Yep, we've seen that. It was something that apparently wasn't very memorable.
Well,
With these characters.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I 2 episodes and I dropped it.
it wasn't bad though. I mean, it was one of the better Heroes Party ones.
Yeah, I did watch the whole series. It was entertaining. It was another like cookie cutter harem isekai show, but the
Yeah,
content was interesting.
I think that's why I dropped it. That's why I dropped Tales of Wedding Rings. I mean, it's a cookie cutter harem, basically.
And speaking of which, I'm gonna shoot Ross for this one. Dimey Dollar for Mecca. Don't even mention that one. That one was terrible.
No, don't recall.
I don't know that one.
Yeah.
I'm not really
Nor
a
do
mecha
I.
person. I'd say the only mecha that I really watched Infinite Stratos, if you consider that mecha, and Knights and Magic.
For me, it would have to be Gridman,
Yep.
and I started watching it but never finished it. Was Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann.
Oh yeah.
That's a good one.
Gurren Lagann is
Gurren
mecha.
Lagann is Gurren Lagann
classic.
was fantastic to a certain point. And
Well,
it
it's a
should have
Studio Trigger.
Hey,
and
Oh,
it should
Doug.
have and it should have ended and it didn't. And then there was another point where it should have ended and it didn't.
And then you had Attack on Titan.
And it
Hey,
did not
Doug.
quite, but
Check your messages, Doug. You forgot about this one.
Oh, Darling in the Franxx too. Yeah, that was another mecha that I watched and enjoyed.
that's one that's been on my list, but I forgot about.
You can drop it after episode 15.
That's another one that
It-
at a certain point people would not shut up to the point where I refuse to watch. That's
So-
a me thing.
if there's a certain point after Gurren Lagann that you didn't like, and I can guess what it is, you're gonna have the same thing with Darlin and the Franks.
They're both Studio Trigger. They're exactly
I love
exactly
and
the same
the
issue.
thing is, I everything I have seen from Trigger, I love.
I
No,
thought-
Gurren Lagann was when they were
thought
still
Gurren Lagann
Gainax,
was
right?
Gainax.
I think
Yeah.
so. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's but no, there was another one I watched a couple of years ago, Platinum End, the same thing. It was really good up to a certain point. Okay, I'm getting the sigh. Really good was pushing it, but there was a point where it should have ended and it didn't. Yeah.
Couple of years ago, or last year, a couple of years ago, 86.
86 was amazing.
Yep.
I loved that show.
I need to watch that.
Yes,
It's really good.
it is.
And talking about going back to Darling in the Franxx, I made a comment years ago when it was first airing that I will still stand by. I personally feel, because having watched the dub and being a big fan of Tia Ballard and loving a lot of the work that she's done, I still feel that 02 was her best work as a voice actress. I feel like the work that she did with that, and one of my favorite female characters of all time, Mizore from Rosario Vampire, was voiced by Tia, as well as Happy the Cat. She's had so many iconic roles, but I felt like her voice acting for 02 was amongst the best I've ever heard her do in her career.
Mm.
And even still, I feel that way. That was one of the top roles that I've ever heard her perform.
Well, it's a good role. I mean, it's such a well-written character. 02 is wonderfully complex.
And apparently tomorrow is National Anime Day.
Cool.
Didn't know
Yes,
that.
the happy side of tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then there's tax day. And if you're in the Northeast, Patriots Day, aka Marathon Monday.
I thought Marathon Monday was next weekend or next
No,
Monday.
it is
Mon-
tomorrow.
It's tomorrow? Oh,
Yep.
It is.
Hopefully they're able to have the marathon without any issues.
I think the only issue is going to be weather related because apparently it's supposed to rain again.
Well, if it was like the last couple of days where it got up into the 50s and rain, that's frankly, unless it's driving rain, runners love that. Oh,
We had rain almost every single day this week, and it was only forecasted for one day. And not minor rain showers either.
And
Now, are you,
we're almost out of time. Holy cow.
Darren, are you coastal or mountain?
I'm Piedmont. So I'm in the middle.
Yeah. So you get the best of both worlds. Stuff coming down
Yeah.
off the mountains for weather or stuff rolling in from the coastal plains for weather.
Yep. 9 times out of 10, it's mountain, but during hurricane season, it's off the coast.
Yep.
And we are just about out of time. I can't believe that this time just flew by that quickly. But that's what happens when you have a lot of amazing guests like we had
I
tonight.
know. And good conversation, courtesy of the chat.
Yes.
Yes.
A big thank you to everybody in the chat who joined us, including Gabrielle, John Knight, Ross. Of course, New Age Gamers was in the chat. So many other awesome people. Nico and Kiyoshi Game Playing Idiots, Raphael Cosplay, and so many more people who tuned in and didn't comment. Or thank you for those of you who have left the likes and hearts on our show. Be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Before we go, obviously, we want to give all our guests a chance to promote themselves in what we call our shameless plugging section. And let's start off with Anthony.
Hey everyone. You can visit our website, which is newedgegamers.com. And that'll go to our eBay page and Macari page. I'm still unpacking from Anime Boston, so there's still stuff going up, but come check us out. If you have a question, message us on Instagram or Twitter or X, whatever they call it now, and we'll be able to answer any questions that you might have.
Do you have any events coming up where people can find you?
My next event is actually going to be Fan Expo. So I'm going to be working Fan Expo with System Arcadia. They're going to do the game. They're most likely going to be doing the game room, and I'll be doing the dealer's hall. I'm going to do a small booth. This is my first Fan Expo, so I've been hearing about going to Fan Expo / Boston Comic Con for so long. I was like, you know what? I got to do it. See what it's about.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anthony. Rodney, feel free to promote yourself.
So nerdcaliber.com is the website. Galleries from Anime Boston. I just put up the last Saturday gallery yesterday. Tomorrow we'll start the 2 Sunday galleries. Videos on the YouTube channel from Anime Boston will be going up probably this coming week. Our next con, the next con that I will be at is probably also Fan Expo, but the next event I will be at will probably be Free Comic Book Day, and I'll be at Double Midnight Comics in Manchester, New Hampshire.
Awesome. And Hatake and Sahara, where can people find more information about your cosplay? And also big news that we promoted earlier this week, you have a podcast you started with episodes out now.
Yeah, so you can find us on Facebook at Hatake and Sahara Cosplay. We mostly update it when we're actually working on something. Our Instagram, HS Cosplayers, and then Apple Podcasts, Spotify, pretty much anywhere you can find a podcast. We have a podcast that just launched last week. The first 6 episodes are up now. We launched 4 last week, 2 more launched today. And that is called the Cosplay Collective New England. It is ourselves, Hatake and Sahara Cosplay, along with Bullet Dancer Cosplay, Raphael Cosplay, and Haiti Skull Creations, which is another duo. So the 6 of us talking about cosplay, anime, video games, manga, all sorts of different things.
Talented people.
Thank you.
And so a lot of awesome stuff going on. Be sure to check out all of their pages. It was a lot of fun to get such a wide variety of views from Anime Boston. Obviously, with Angela, my wife, and myself, we could only get to so much of the convention. So being able to have Anthony in from the dealer's hall and get the perspective from there, Hatake and Sahara from the cosplaying side of things, and Rodney from Nerd Caliber, who does an amazing job at the photography and the costumes and everything. It was a lot of fun to have all of you guys joining us, and really thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Next week we do not have a guest lined up just yet, but we do have a guest coming up April 28th. We have cosplayer and VTuber Mink the Satyr will be joining us, so we are excited about that. Also, if you're a fan of the VTubing world, a good friend of ours, Justin Hamburg, just launched his VTuber model on his birthday, April 4th. So be sure to check check out his Twitch channel. I believe it's I'm Just In. So all one word. Be sure to check it out. I think his schedule showed he was going to be streaming Wednesday and Sunday this week, or Thursday and Sunday. So be sure to check that out. Support of we want to show support of all of our friends who have been a part of the AZR family over the years. Big thank you to everybody who's tuned in tonight on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch, and a big thank you to all of you who tune in the future via the podcast platforms. Really means a lot to us. Like I said, until next week, when we're going to have more random anime talk. I hope everybody has a wonderful week. Stay safe, and we'll be back with more Anime-Zing Radio here on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Have a great night, everyone.
Good night,
Night all.
everybody.
Bye. Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good night.